Oh,
Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
oh.
Oh God.
I'm not in a good mood today.
Oh.
I've just seen a bunch of bad media all at once.
Oh right. Well, I mean that should be fuel for the old trucks fire. I mean,
Yeah,
surely.
Possibly.
I mean,
Which
I
side
haven't
of the
seen
road do I
any.
drive on? I drive on
You
this.
drive on the right because we're not going
Yes.
to Britain today. We're in Dutchland.
We're going.
We're in the Netherlands. We're in fact.
We're in France right now.
Oh, we're. I'm sorry. We are currently in France and we're heading toward Amsterdam
Yes.
with our precious load of sugar, quote unquote. Can we see our truck, please?
Yes. Just let me.
Yes, we're in Lyon.
Trudeau.
Yes.
You know, last
carrying
time we
our
had a
Prado.
Trudeau van and we commented on it. The YouTube video encoding made it too black to see.
What?
So hopefully it's visible this time. There it is, guys.
Yeah,
Trudeau.
Look at that.
We kind of like that portmanteau.
Yeah, the portmanteau.
Port.
They call me portmanteau. That's it. I'm sure that must have already been done.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm liking the slightly lavender insides of these tunnels.
Oh god, my steering feels all weird today.
Yeah, the truck's thing was having a bit of controller issues, which,
But the steering wheel seems to be responding the way you'd expect. I don't know.
I think you're just tired. We're both just tired. I've been in the first week of rehearsals for the revival of the Wet Dance, which we're doing, and, you wouldn't believe what a number this has done on my thighs, ladies and gentlemen. My thighs are just, are howling.
Mm.
They're howling thighs.
Howling thighs.
Yeah, they're if you ever want to pick something up again, you will treat us better. And I'm like, art has its demands.
And you are going to meet those demands.
Yeah, I mean, my problem is that back the first time we did this, I wasn't particularly agile or coordinated or gainly, if that's a word.
Should be.
But what I could contribute was a willingness to treat my body badly, and throw myself around and fall over and slam into things and take pratfalls, which I did with
It was very impressive.
unhealthy regularity. And I'll still be doing that in this show, but I'm talking about during the rehearsal process specifically. There was a lot of falling over, and I can't do that anymore. I'm officially old now. Something in the last couple of years has changed, and now I'm old. And so
You weren't 30 when you did it the first time, were you?
that's right, and now I am.
So much time has passed.
I know. We've known each other for quite a while.
That's
you and I,
true.
Josh. It doesn't feel like that long, which I guess is a good sign for a friendship.
I mean, in one way it doesn't.
You still feel fresh.
In one way it doesn't, but in another way, this is my social life now. It's like I used to have another social life, and you were the new guy.
The ancillary social life.
Yes,
Yeah.
you posed an interesting alternative, shall we say, and that old social life is now people that I see in parties sometimes.
And you tend to make fun of them when you do.
Yeah, I mean, let's not share that publicly. Oh my god, okay, I'm not paying a toll. Oh, you have to. That's kind of it. I didn't know that there was a hard-coded limitation. Let's see just how much damage my truck took. Surprisingly, none.
Well, you didn't run into anything physical.
That's true.
Anywho, boy, Trucks is just acting funny today. But anyway, yeah.
This steering is very strange. I can't even. I mean, I'm sure this isn't very interesting to you guys, but
Well, why don't you finish?
it's like it's a boat.
Why don't you finish telling me about how our friendship is a marriage that's begun to lose its luster, and that
That's not
you're
what I
starting
was
to pine
saying.
for other social
I was saying that
venues.
a veil of normalcy has taken its foothold in our relationship.
It just
and I think
it
this
happens
is a
with
good
any
thing.
relationship. It's like you have to.
yeah.
You have to get over that initial bloom of excitement and mutual discovery.
I
and
feel
then,
good about this.
Right.
It means it's not some weird fluke.
Exactly. It's not, the crush phase is over, and we've achieved a kind of
Equilibrium, homeostasis.
Yeah, a kind of homeostasis. So yeah, that was unexpectedly sweet. What were we talking about before we? Oh yeah,
All the bad shit I saw today.
Oh yeah.
That's what I mentioned.
Although I was also talking about the rehearsal process, and I did I managed to slam myself into a wall and embed and get a bruise the exact shape of a Phillips head screw in my arm.
Oh,
intentionally. Oh, it's gone now.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like I'm living up to scratch, and that there are a few potential humorous self-injuries in these old bones yet. If you're in New York, you definitely have to come and see this performance when we put it on. It's going to be great.
I'm going to take all of you in New York to see it. Hello.
Holy shit, what is going on?
It's a boat. I'm driving a fucking boat. It's going to cause some crashes today.
Okay. You probably need to readjust your
Would you like to feel the steering? It's so weird.
Okay. I mean,
just move that left stick. See that delay there?
Yeah, it's a little bit sticky.
Now don't run into that bus. All right.
Oh, well. Well, best of luck, Josh.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, you saw some things that made you very angry today. They both involved, like, apparently needless and superfluous violence against women.
Yeah.
And at least one of them involved incredibly contrived and terrible plotting.
Yeah. The plotting in the first one was okay.
And
that's the thing. It ruined a well-paced TV show with just the horrible, horrible treatment of its female lead. I'm talking about the pilot of The Americans.
Yeah, which I've heard mostly, positive things about from the folks.
I can see why people would like it, but god damn, I just can't get over this particular plot line. Now that I'm on this subject, I'll just summarize it for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot episode. To make this really quick, to like completely remove all the other subplots and main plots other than this one that I got hung up on. The female lead, who is a KGB agent posing as a woman in America with a husband and 2 kids who are completely unsuspecting about any of this. Is this based on true events? Because this is a theme I've been seeing a lot. Weirdly.
No, I think that we're just in that mode where everybody's doing the double agent secret spy thing at once.
Yeah. Okay. Like there was an episode of Elementary that dealt with the kids of the KGB spies, and it's just weird to see this twice in a year. But
there was a news story about like enough long ago now that would have filtered all the way through the creative colon of these processes. But
all right, okay.
Holy crap! Okay, wow, well done.
Yeah, that was hard. Yeah, so this the only origin story this woman receives in the pilot episode is that one of her superior officers raped her during a training exercise, and then the rest of the episode deals with them capturing this same officer who, conveniently enough, turns out to be the defector that they're assigned to capture and possibly kill. I mean, they're meant to get him home to Russia, but they know he's going to die when that happens. So the girl is like, "There's an operational blackout because of all the heat from this, so we are entitled to just kill him if that's what we want to do." Like, she's really eager to kill him.
Right.
And the husband is like, "No, we have to maybe even make a deal with him and defect to America."
Right.
But anyway, long story short, things come to a head, and she beats the defector up. Like, she totally kicks his ass in a fight, which is a reversal of what happened in her past, where he kicked her ass in a fight and then raped her.
Right.
And then, after losing the fight, he's bleeding, leaning against his car, and he's all, "I never meant to hurt you. It was a perk of the job." And this, for some reason, makes her not want to kill him anymore. Or perhaps it was the fact that she was able to beat him in a fight. But either way, it's cheap and convenient as hell. But the husband, who now gets the picture, is like, "Oh, I'll kill you!" And he kills him. And he's dead. And then they dispose of the body, the husband and wife, and have a really lengthy sex scene to that Phil Collins song, "I can feel it coming in the air tonight."
Okay, so there's a little bit of situational irony afoot here.
It's so unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
That sounds...
I don't know if you heard me, but I actually exclaimed out loud, "This is awful!"
It sounds incredibly distasteful. It really does.
Yeah.
It's,
It really put me in a sour mood. And so then I decided to watch the ending of BioShock Infinite.
Of course, because that'll cheer you up.
Part 2. Which I'm not... Let's not belabor the BioShock thing. Suffice it to say that
Ken
has
Levine is a
compounded
hack.
What a horrible hack. I can't believe how bad everything is. Everything is so bad. I'm coming around to your vision.
That was my vision in high school, man. Don't come around to that.
Oh my
vision.
God, it happened again.
Well, it's happened like 3 times so far. I think you've just discovered a shortcut. You used to be so good at that, man. He's really thrown you for a loop.
I'm in a bad mood. My car's a truck.
Yeah.
I mean, my truck is a boat. And everything is bad.
This reminded me of a story that was... this gets us round in a roundabout fashion. What I was hoping to talk about this week is a story that Tumblr user Chronic Pnin, who you should be following on Tumblr, because
I don't know if I know this Tumblr user.
Yeah, she's pretty good. She's into things like literature.
Cool. I like literature.
Yeah, she's like one of Rob's oldest Tumblr buddies, and is full of good jokes. But anyway, she was posting about and complaining about an article that was published on the Medium, which was...
It's called Medium. It's not called The Medium.
Which was published on Medium.
Yes. Published on the Twitter is what it basically sounded like you just said.
I know, but I would say that because of...
But you would say that ironically.
Ironic, like, grandpa-ness. And there was no irony in... So yes, it was published on Medium, and we'll talk about a little bit more about what Medium actually is in a second.
Sure.
But it was there was a thing going around Tumblr which basically warned people that there was a sort of out-of-nowhere rape scene in Divergent, a movie which is based on a pre-existing property and thus has a pre-existing fan base, which means that there have been a lot of people crawling out of the woodwork trying to justify the movie against the sort of implicit criticism, which basically says just... People were just saying, warning, this movie has a rape scene that kind of comes out of nowhere, so if that shit, is triggering to you, you probably shouldn't go and see this movie.
Right.
And there was a host of people who were fans of this product who came up and said, no, it's the good kind of rape scene.
That's like, okay. So for starters, this is kind of an unnecessary reaction.
Yes,
even if it is
if true. Yeah. Well, first of all, there's no. I think that the premise that there could be a good kind of rape scene is probably questionable.
I mean, to begin with. I've also read this article. My girlfriend linked me to this article because she actually thought it made the rape scene sound kind of interesting and perhaps worth watching.
Oh, Jesus, okay.
I mean, I'd have to see the movie to judge.
To judge, but...
I'm not going to condemn the movie.
Without having seen it.
Right.
So it's sort of like... That's not quite the point that I'm driving toward here, but regardless, then there was somebody who... I was extremely confused because her last name is Lalonde.
Yeah, that was confusing. Are you like in character?
Yes.
Like this article was pretty overwritten.
No, but that is a last name that real people do have. So, so anyway, the what was I saying? Oh yeah, So this article went on a great length about how this scene was actually empowering and feminist because it involves the woman
once again the women
assailant
and then being congratulated for it rather than shamed was seemingly the thrust of this.
Right,
I mean, I guess
series of question marks.
That is definitely not as bad as some things.
It's not, for instance, as bad as what we saw. Is what you saw earlier today.
It's not as bad as the Americans.
But it sort of like there's this kind of like equitability between sexual violence and violence and this sort of like revenge thing and all this other stuff which is weird about this. But like the thing I found interesting about this beyond it being a contretemps over a movie that I haven't seen and so I can't really, say whether this thing is artistically justified, if that's even a thing that, it's an interesting question about whether, that's a separate question, one that I don't feel like I'm prepared to get into right now.
Yes, there are other movies we could bring up into that discussion. I've heard of a movie called Irreversible.
Yeah, I was going to say there's this French director who really likes this shit. And, and what do we say to the Lars von Triers of the world? We tell them to go fuck themselves, generally, as far as I'm concerned. It's like, there is a way to do this, I think. But the thing is that those movies that I've seen that use rape as a plot device never get it right.
Right. If nothing else.
Those that use rape as a kind of artistic metaphor or something also get it right. And it's generally... not, and it's like, it's the sort of thing that, all other things being equal, right, violence can be used as symbol, and that's fine, people use violence to symbolize other things all the time, but because of the world that we live in, and the pre-existing problem with reducing women in narrative to simply being sort of symbolic carriers of things, and because of rape culture, and because of the normalization of rape, and this is a special category. And
you're giving yourself one hell of a cross to bear if you.
You'd better justify the fuck out of yourself if you do this,
yeah.
And it's an open question, and I doubt that this movie earns it.
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, I doubt.
From the plot summary in this article,
it's like a Harry Potter cyberpunk dystopia movie.
I have little doubt that this movie is better rendered than that article was.
Yeah, but anyway, the article was awful.
Yeah,
and one of the things that I found interesting about the response to it on the Chronic Pinin had.
Can we clarify just a little bit why this article was so awful?
Yeah.
The writing style in this thing was just whack. It summarizes a lot of elements of the movie, like that people put on the sorting hat and are told which faction in this weird post-apocalyptic world they're going to be put into based on their aptitudes.
Uh-huh.
And it described all this with an enthusiasm that kind of made it sound like the author not only believes but thinks that you should automatically understand why this kind of fictional construct is exciting and good, which frankly it isn't. And it's such an amateur piece of criticism,
right.
And you can tell the author makes some serious assumptions about what's good, and it also gets really overdramatic when it starts talking about what they liked about the way it handles the rape scene. It makes it this big grandiose.
It shoots whatever credibility it might have had by sort of by outing itself as a piece made by a fan.
Yeah.
And I guess to make a long story short, it reads like a Tumblr post.
Yeah.
And not one of the good ones.
No.
So, but it was presented in a way that looked like it was part of one of those slick online mags.
Yeah, like Medium.
One of the Alls or your Hairpins or your.
Yeah, share about your friend's reaction, because I think that was colorful and
illustrative. So Chronic Pinin was like, this is was going on about how terrible this article was, which it is, and grumbling about Lalonde and all of this stuff, and then was like, and what the fuck is Medium? What kind of publication is this? Who the fuck is publishing this kind of shit? And so the answer to that question is Medium is actually a social networking platform, essentially.
Right. No one published it.
Yep.
Except for the author. And, this is kind of... The funny thing is that this is what's exciting about Medium. I mean, I don't think what we're hitting on here is a problem with Medium so much as a funny effect that it can have.
Yeah.
And, it's actually kind of cool that, this site can trick people who see your writing into thinking that this was, professionally published.
I mean, this, of course, is a thing that will be temporary.
Yes.
of necessity, in that,
Right. I mean, the trickery of it, yes. But it does take some of the work away from an amateur writer. You don't need to, hire a web designer anymore to make sure that your article looks good on all the different platforms we look at articles on.
And it is absolutely true that that consciously or unconsciously, we'll take writing more seriously if it is formatted well, and if it is has nice spacing and nice, chunky margins.
Yeah, big, easy to read letters, good integration of images, just all the stuff.
All this stuff is super key to the experience.
It even has a better commenting format. You can't put comments at the end of the article, but rather on specific paragraphs.
Mm-hmm. This, and in this particular case, as a result of the fact that their writing was formatted in this way, this person's opinion garnered weight, or not weight in terms of authoritativeness, but weight in terms of we really need to smash this person over the head for saying something so stupid in such a public way, kind of a thing. Which is of course a double-edged sword, but if you want to be taken seriously, this is a good way to do that.
Yeah.
Wasn't that New York will slap you in the face instead of lunch money thing that you posted also, that you made fun of, also originally posted on Tumblr?
On Medium, you mean?
I posted on Medium and then cross-posted to Tumblr.
Possibly. I didn't really I didn't see that. If so,
I saw.
But it does seem like
I
the
did.
kind of thing
I
that would
think
show up on
my
Medium.
a friend of mine independently linked it on her Facebook page and was like, "Yeah, absolutely, yeah." And I was like, "Jesus Christ!" And so I linked your Tumblr post, which she also liked.
That's
but
cute.
yeah, but the point being,
Yeah, a lot of, I mean, as with basically any place where there is writing, a lot of really stupid stuff garners the attention of like the most people.
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about how Medium works, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those places where things that are very popular get front paged.
Yes.
Right.
And if you are, and some of that stuff is good.
Yeah.
If you're an author who is good at writing stuff that's like gonna be popular, if it can just get the right eyeballs on it, Medium is for you.
Right.
It's not unlikely that your thing will get a lot of attention, and you know whether or not you can do anything with that is then like incumbent on you. But it's a valuable platform in that way because it gives stuff a lot of visibility.
Yep.
It does have this corollary effect, perhaps, that stuff which people don't pay as much attention to is kind of difficult to find on Medium. I mean, if you're not getting front page on there, then you just have to link to it yourself, and your own channels that you already had are still all you've got, to an extent. I mean,
what sort of things tend to get front paged?
Various. Probably the main theme I've detected is, well, two. There's two. One of them is just silly, funny, relatable things like, "Dear guy who made my burrito, you made my burrito wrong. You're supposed to put everything on top of each other, not in a row, so I only get to eat one ingredient at a time."
Yes, the classic burrito malady.
Yes. We're going directly through Luxembourg, isn't that cool?
Yeah. See, keep your eye out for bucktooth grills. That's a Smith's reference.
Yes, he's not just saying mean things about Luxembourgians. But the other thing which is huge on Medium is like advice for freelancers. Because of course, the main
cater to your audience.
The main people who are reading Medium are the people who are trying to write.
I thought there was a lot of like political.
Yeah, there is that too.
Political op-editing as well.
Yeah, there's that. There's a fair amount of video game stuff. I found a lot of pretty good things on Medium. I'm mostly excited about its video game contingent. That the way Medium organizes itself is that everyone can form a kind of I forget what they call them, a collage, or maybe they basically function like magazines in that they are curated, user curated things which, when popular, can kind of corral the best of a certain theme.
They're mixtapes.
Yeah, basically. And like you submit to it when you write a thing, and if the editor likes it, then they will put it on. Oh wow!
So everybody can get to play periodicals and stuff. It's like a big sandbox, except nobody gets paid in a sandbox either. It's like, you know what I'm trying to say. Nobody gets paid is the point.
Nobody gets paid, but people might get Twitter exposure because your Medium account is directly linked to your Twitter account. You cannot register for Medium without a Twitter account. It's kind of funny.
Does Medium post for you on Twitter all the time, whether you want it to or not?
You can tell it not to.
Okay.
But like it's a big social media thing essentially, and it's smart in that way because your social media profile is important if you're trying to make it as a single writer just publishing stuff and trying to build your audience. So yeah, I mean, Twitter exposure is the main thing you're going to get from writing about Medium. Oh god, I forgot to refuel.
You did.
So
well, good luck.
It's kind of promising and kind of problematic.
Yeah,
what's your take
much like
on
the
it?
rest of the internet.
Yeah.
I mostly just wanted you to weigh in on it because I think it's interesting how people how young writers are trying to make it these days.
Yeah,
doing their online brands.
When I write my things, I'm definitely going to put them on Medium. My plan right now is to put them on Medium and YouTube at the same time. And to kind of cross-link
on YouTube with you talking them,
and
with
on video editing, and on Medium with some text, maybe additional footnotes on the Medium version, just as kind of a bonus.
So that's good. So you'll be unleashing your media blitz.
Ideally, it's a way to get people to click on the links and look at all my stuff, and maybe subscribe to me in more than one place at once.
Oh, that's useful.
Yeah. So it's important. This is kind of the thing. It's important to have a big social media strategy for what you're doing, and like for me, I'm looking at like video game criticism. There's a lot of text stuff that gets circulated, but nothing is so centralized as the YouTube content is. So that's what I'm personally hoping to kind of hone in on.
Yep. I was put in mind of these questions because I was looking at the documentary that was made by Dave Kellett of who writes the webcomic Sheldon, as well as the webcomic Drive, and who's one of my favorite. It's a quiet favorite of mine because he is really good at writing a newspaper strip. I mean, that's sort of the deal, is that Sheldon is a newspaper strip, and like a newspaper style strip. In fact, it was even like on GoComics.com. It was syndicated briefly, but only online for whatever that means. And the jokes that he makes are pretty much still funny, like with the regularity of a standard funny joke maker. Much better than much better than the par certainly of your average newspaper strip artist these days.
Yeah.
And so he made he's been spending the last couple of years, essentially, it was actually the first thing I ever backed on Kickstarter, making a documentary called Stripped, which is partially just sort of a paean to to being a cartoonist and how cool it is to be a cartoonist and strip cartooning and all of this. And he interviews like absolutely everybody. He interviews a bunch of the old guard of newspaper strip people. He interviews a bunch of webcomic people. He even actually gets an audio interview with Bill Watterson, which is the first interview that Bill Watterson has.
I think I saw that interview.
Yeah, has given in maybe ever.
Yeah, I think since he.
Yeah, Watterson is a particularly media shy individual. And they even got Watterson to design the poster, which is an accomplishment.
Right.
And
look at the way my truck is wobbling.
Yeah, I think that we're just like
I'm literally a bobblehead.
I think that we're breaking trucks by playing it too much. That's the only explanation that I came up with.
Maybe this is an oversized load.
Maybe.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that would make sense actually, since we are allowed to do that now.
Yeah.
But anywho, it is 24 tons of sugar. I mean, that's a lot of sugar.
How many tons do we usually carry?
Less than that.
Are you sure? Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
That would be it then.
Regardless,
24 tons.
We are so good at this game. Yeah, no, that was my thing. I was like, surely not.
23 tons.
Right, but still, that's
a lot of tons.
That's a lot of tons.
Yeah.
That's like, you could. Wow. You would have just taken out that entire booth if this game had physics. All 3 times. But sort of the narrative through line that emerges in this movie, as narrative through lines do in good documentaries, it's very generic in terms of its documentary style, but the through line that emerges is essentially the fact that newspapers are suffering at the moment, and that like hundreds of newspapers have closed, and there seems to be no sign of that stopping because, of course, we have the internet now, so newspapers are old and stupid, and there's a lot of like the old guard lamenting the sort of the potentially impending demise of the syndicate system, and being like, wow, it's like I don't know how these kids are supposed to make money, and like being like, I'm an artist, I don't it's like I became an artist because I didn't want to deal with any of this business shit, that's why the syndicate's there, so that they can take care of that, and then there's the new people who are like, well, I sell T-shirts. It's advertising, it's brand building, and they go through all the different ways that webcomic creators who actually end up making money do make money.
Yeah. It is, and there's reasons to be sad about the loss of the old, but that doesn't mean that the new is untenable. But my favorite comic strip ever is Crazy Cat, which could probably not exist outside of the world of newspaper syndication.
Well, no, actually, I disagree. Because what you see, I mean, the thing about Crazy Cat is that it couldn't exist now.
Yeah.
Within the current model of newspaper syndication, first of all, like, all those lovely,
I
lovely,
don't mean to suggest that it could have existed 20 years ago either.
lovely full color Sunday strips. That's all gone.
Yeah.
One of the things that was very interesting to me about this movie was looking at like the old Sunday strips, like the old they were full pages, and like Little Nemo, the full page Little Nemo things, which is like draftsmanship that has been lost.
Yeah,
like people just. I mean, I ain't one of them folks who are gonna say that like there's no good art being made now, because there's tons and tons and like tons of much better art than was ever made before because of all this new technology. But there is a particular
kind of art.
There's a particular kind of art which is just not made anymore, and that is the art which you need to have been like a draftsman your entire fucking life to have done. There's a particular kind of graphic design that's also kind of just not done anymore, and these are so on display. And like, even though Crazy Cat doesn't do that, it still like depended on the sort of the vastness of it, the spirit of it. It depended on these huge canvases that
totally
could fill up.
But I guess what I was trying to get at is that it's a comic which is very aware of its limitations, its form's limitations. Like it does have those wonderful full color pages, but if Harriman, like there are ones that Harriman colored himself, and they were like these like subtle dark watercolors.
Yeah.
Whereas what I think it was Hearst could actually do in publishing, where it was like a very limited color palette.
Right.
And you can see that Harriman like addressed that limitation and like made Crazy Cat into this gaudy pastel 1920s nightmare, but he really embraced it and like made it the aesthetic.
I mean, we've discussed many times before.
Absolutely. Limitations
are
rewarding to creativity.
Right? But on the other hand,
all I'm trying to say is that like if that's the kind of thing, like if you grow up in an environment where like limitations like that or like others that came later are like what you're attached to and like have formed your aesthetic, then it's understandable if you're bummed. Like when things change.
Oh, absolutely, and it's like, but the thing that you see when you step back a little bit is that things changed quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like, by the time that we were kids, it wasn't normal for the funnies to be funny anymore.
Yeah.
Like by the time when I was a kid,
I made a mistake.
The funny comic strip was kind of like the comic strip that was actually made by a living person. It wasn't just sort of a sort of zombie extension of a property that had been created in the 1920s. Was on its way out, and the newspaper and the strips themselves got smaller and smaller, and all of this. So it's like this is a process that has been going on for my entire life, and we're just seeing the sort of. And from that perspective, as somebody who really loves comics, when I look at webcomics, I see a renaissance.
Yeah.
I basically see
there's a huge lifting of limitations.
Yeah, I see. Well, I mean, I just see the form being saved essentially, and also this massive democratization, because the thing about the syndicate system is that only one person in a gazillion gets it, which means that the people who do get it are very protective of it because it's like you got drafted into the NBA, right?
Yeah.
But that would be one thing if they were the best.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah.
Like clearly not.
I doubt that many people who really care about comics are upset that like Garfield is no longer the standard bearer of the comic form.
Well, it's like the person who was like the most who was the most stringent about this that they were interviewing about I don't like these changes, and being in the syndicate used to mean something. It's Greg fucking Evans who draws fucking Luann, and I'm not very sympathetic.
Yeah.
When they have like Kate Beaton also on here as a talking head, and Aaron Diaz, who. Whatever you think of him, the person who's the closest to doing the kind of full-page things that you used to marvel over right now is Aaron Diaz, who draws Dresden Kodak, and just like and
webcomics are cool. I haven't read them in a long time.
Yeah, you're sort of off webcomics. I feel like there was a boom and a leveling, and now we're into a sort of a new generation, and the bar for entry is much higher than it used to be.
Yeah.
In terms of your own...
You kind of get vetted by the... it's curious how oligarchical it has become again. You kind of need to be vetted. Like, I remember Homestuck, I found out about it because it got shouted out on Dinosaur Comics.
Right.
Or rather, it was Problem Sleuth at the time, but still.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like I definitely find things because... new webcomics, in large part because they're connected to people who are already good. But also just like, the sheer baseline quality of a webcomic now is like, in order to be taken seriously, you have to be a much better
there were a lot of
artist, web designer,
inexplicably huge.
Yeah, than you used to be, which
had some really negative results. I mean,
frankly,
that launched the entire Penny Arcade business.
Yeah.
Not that Penny Arcade Expo hasn't done anything good ever, but still.
Well, it is without question that the two people who came off the worst in this entire movie were Krahulik and Hawkins.
Were they in it?
Yeah.
Oh, golly.
They were in it, and they were like, "What? What, old man? What?" Essentially. Which, as grown men with children who run a multi-million-dollar business, just...
That sounds like an indie game, the movie kind of situation, where it's like, this is a movie with a positive message, but it also has Phil Fish in it.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, there are people who I'm not comfortable associating myself with on both sides of this divide, which isn't actually as much of a divide as, even the movie is very gentle about it, and everybody's very polite and nice about everybody else for the most part. And everybody's kind of in awe of Jim Davis, who was actually the first person who really came to comics with a business mind.
Yeah. Jim Davis, Garfield author?
Jim Davis, author of Garfield, who created an empire off the back of it, basically, in the same way that the Penny Arcade people did, except that the Penny Arcade people had to hire somebody to be their business manager, and Jim Davis just did it all himself.
Yeah.
But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that these new models are becoming codified right now.
Yeah.
It's like you get the audience, you get the advertising revenue, you get the clicks, and then you sell your shirts, and then you go to conventions, and there's just this whole ecosystem that's been built up.
Yeah.
And a lot of people make really good stuff that is just completely invisible. But they have
any shout-outs?
They have their little audience. Jesus, I don't even remember what this comic is called, unfortunately. I just started reading one that I mentioned on my Tumblr. We'll put a link to it in the description. Okay. It's just like, clearly its influences are very clear. It's like it is, you can see traces of like Octopus Pie in its DNA, and but that's a good thing. We're getting into that second generation where people are refining the stuff made by the first big, successful, stable webcomics. Well, I would say that we're actually in the third generation now.
It's also taxonomical.
Well, I mean, it's like there definitely were, back in the day it was all like, weird, nerdy, stuff, and people who were early adopters for tech were essentially the people who did webcomics, which...
Is this, what year?
This is like the late 90s.
When did Dinosaur Comics start? Because that's really what started me on this entire webcomic.
Dinosaur Comics didn't start until after that. I'm talking about stuff like Sluggy Freelance and Kevin and Kel. And,
Oh, I remember.
The first webcomic...
Really
the
8-bit
first...
Theater.
8-bit Theater was actually a little bit later.
It's even later, yeah.
Yeah. And... the first webcomic...
What about that one with the guy who edited the Mega Man sprites? What was that?
Bob and George.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first of the sprite comics. I could do a whole show about webcomic history because I got all this stuff in my brain.
Yeah.
And about Chris Crosby and the rise and fall of Keen Spot. And
I don't know what the hell that is.
Oh, man.
It's funny how these old webcomics, they sound like old newspaper comics from the 50s.
Keen Spot wasn't a comic. It was where you went for your webcomics back in the day. It was the major, sort of pro webcomic hosting service, and they sort of you could put all their comics together on a little page.
It sounds like it's funny that sounds like a completely outdated format, but a similar thing has arisen for video game criticism. This is just what happens before things become a real cult.
And now, if you want to tell if somebody's big business, you see if they're doing their T-shirt sales through Topetico or not.
Yeah.
And that includes John Hodgman and Maximum Fun.
Right.
But yeah, no. So there were those first guys who were very techie and people who, people found nerd audiences because it was only nerds on the internet then, which meant that Sluggy Freelance and like Mega Tokyo, cursed be it,
Oh god, I remember that.
became huge, and and that was sort of the time when Penny Arcade came up as well, and then some of them survived and some of them didn't, and then like art comics essentially were invented. Stuff the Umbrella folks and some people graduated from Keen Spot, and Jeffrey Rowland, who does Wigu and who founded Topedo Co., was on Keen Spot and then moved on. So all these sort of hipstery, arty, niche sort of indie comics came on board, and a lot of the favorites there. And now we're in a sort of thing where just everybody's doing it, and it's all different, and it's just what you do if you want to make comics. And so there's way more out there than there ever was when I was first getting into it, and there's way more good professional stuff out there, but it's all increasingly niche-y. And if it's not part of this sort of standard coterie, which for better or worse seems basically to be the people who Ryan North asked to contribute to the Hamlet book, or like if you know Ryan North or David Malky, then you're in, and if you don't, you're out.
What does David Malky do besides book war?
Wondermark.
I don't even know what that is. All right.
It's basically clip art.
Cool.
It's Victorian clip art.
Oh, I've seen some of that.
Yeah.
That's pretty good usually.
Yeah, well, it's like it was interesting to have Malky and North on here talking about like North was a little bit smug actually.
It sounded like you just said when we had them on the truck show.
No,
that would be so great.
It would be great. You hear that, guys? When they were in this movie, like North was even like, I get people, and it's interesting. They had the people from A Softer World on there as well. And because these people don't really make...
Oh, God. A Softer World, what are they up to now?
They're still doing their thing.
Jesus.
I mean, it's like Joe... But that's the thing. It's like these people don't do traditional webcomics, or traditional comic writing, but they're still like some of the most successful webcomics, in quotes, that there have been. And... it also means that they're more prone to... to trying other things, like David Malky and the Machine of Death stuff, and all of the extracurricular stuff that Ryan North has done, which is sort of has bound together all these other webcomic artists into these like real world bricks and mortar projects. And so like Joe Kimo writes novels and all of it from A Softer World and all of this stuff. So there is kind of a huge like change in what it is to make a comic. Which is part of what Homestuck was about as well.
Yes, that was the cool thing.
But yeah, no, Ryan North is a charming motherfucker, and he certainly comes off as a charming, humble Canadian motherfucker in this movie, but it's like, he was like, people email me all the time saying, I don't like comics, but I like what you do.
Oh, Dinosaur Comic is a comic in the loosest sense.
Well, yeah, but what his response to this was, well, guess what? You like comics. Yeah. What I do is a comic, and you like comics.
I parked it in the end.
You did. Well done. Oh, that worked out.
I was thinking I could loop that back around to talk about Medium and how like it's interesting that the comic form is going through all these changes, and maybe like the writing form needs to rethink a few things too, and maybe that's already underway. But yeah, you just let that thought be planted in your head. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like freelance writing has been a thing forever, though.
Yeah.
I mean, way more than like freelance cartooning has been.
Oh yeah. It's just a matter of how we consume it. Like the gatekeepers are what we're constantly reevaluating in the writing world, because it's so hard to. Like, it's so hard, even for the best stuff, to get an audience sometimes. And this is true in comics as well. This is just the internet in general.
Yep.
Oh well.
Yeah, I think that we successfully talked about what we were trying to talk about there.
All right, everybody.